The Biden administration has announced wide-ranging sanctions against Russia. President Biden signed an executive order declaring the threat from Russia to be a national emergency. Meanwhile, the Treasury Department is imposing sanctions on 32 individuals and entities for their part in an alleged influence campaign in the run-up to the last election, presidential election that is. The State Department also announced that it is expelling 10 officials from Russia's diplomatic mission in the U.S. So to talk more about this is Olivia Gazis. She is in Washington. Olivia, thanks for joining us again. What do we know about these 10 officials that the State Department is expelling?
Sure. Glad to be with you, Anne-Marie. Sources told CBS News last night, and the White House announced this morning, that these are diplomats and intelligence operatives working here in Washington, D.C. These are the kinds of people that are usually at the top of the list for diplomatic expulsions of the sort. You'll recall that President Obama in 2016, after the first round of Russian election interference came to be known, in retaliation expelled 35 diplomats, aka spies, and closed down 2 Russian compounds in addition to issuing sanctions, etc. This suite of actions is similar from the Biden administration, but it's got different components, and it's targeting a broader range of malign behavior, according to the administration.
Olivia, as you know, the U.S. has sanctioned Russia before, as you just mentioned. The point is that they've done no sanctions, and the result has been not a lot. So is there supposed to be a particular bite to these measures that would make them more likely to succeed than the ones that you just mentioned?
So, Vlad, if you're asking if Russia is difficult to deter, I think the answer is yes. The case in point is that Internet Research Agency, right? The Russian troll farm that we caught red-handed in 2016 and 2018 and 2020. I mean, it was individuals associated with it were sanctioned, they were indicted. Cyber Command took the whole thing offline in 2018, and it still cropped right back up and got back to business. I think what this administration is saying is that that's the reason that there is a multitude of actions being issued here, not a single one. It's naming and shaming, it's sanctions, it's expulsions, it's bolstered cooperation on the cyber front with partners overseas, and it may also be other things that are not yet public. I think it also depends a little bit on what you mean by succeed, right? So what is the goal here for the U.S.? Is it to permanently chasten and embarrass Russia, or is it maybe to bring it to the table for talks? I think experienced diplomats might tell you that at first glance, this package looks like a little bit more bark than bite. On balance, 10 diplomats/spies isn't that many. It's not clear how many U.S. institutions are interested in ruble-backed bonds to begin with. The Russians may take it as a point of pride that the SolarWinds hack that has been described as massive and sophisticated and the hack of the decade is now being formally attributed to their SVR, their Foreign Intelligence Services. That said, Moscow never likes Western alliances and partnerships to deepen. NATO is fully involved here, so we'll have to see how they see it.
So aside from not being deterred, the Russians may very well respond to this in a retaliatory manner. Based on how this has gone before, what are some of the areas where we might see them retaliate?
That's a good question. And, I think the Russians are well aware that they were due for attack in this ongoing tit for tat, right? As sophisticated as SolarWinds was, no cyber intrusion is going to go undetected forever. And they were just caught red-handed on too many other things. Again, I think it depends on, it needs to be thought of within this overarching objective of the Biden administration, which is now saying that it wants to have a, quote, stable and predictable relationship with Moscow, that it doesn't think that we need to continue on a negative trajectory. It had to impose these costs for past bad behavior, but where do we go from here? So it remains to be seen whether Russia is interested in that kind of relationship or if it prefers to continue on this longstanding trajectory of undermining U.S. interests. Obviously, we are very closely monitoring their massive buildup of Russian troops on Ukraine's border. I think if you ask the intelligence community, for example, just this week, their assessment was Moscow is going to continue to employ a variety of tactics, assassinations, cyber interference, to undermine U.S. influence, to weaken Western alliances, and to assert itself in the ways that it can on the world stage.
Olivia, as you know, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Afghanistan today on a surprise visit. What's the purpose of the trip?
Right. We just learned about that overnight. It seems as though the Secretary of State was sent there in order to assure the Afghan government that, and presumably its people, that the U.S. is going to be committed to that country despite this troop drawdown coming in September. Secretary Biden told Ghani, the president of Afghanistan, that the partnership between the two countries is changing, but it's enduring. This is because news of this drawdown has created a lot of anxiety, understandably, about what happens to the Afghan people if we see the Taliban regain power, if we see al-Qaeda regaining a safe haven. The Biden administration seems to be betting here that it can keep those things in check and not own the consequences. You know, obviously, Vlad, you were just having a discussion. Opinions about the wisdom of this decision are really strong and really wide-ranging, and there are a lot of variables that inform it. So we'll have to see what the consequences on the ground are first.
All right. Olivia Gazis, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Vlad and Anne-Marie. Thanks.